Hi, this is Kati Rán, artist from the Netherlands, and I make Nordic folk music.
Hello, Kati. What brings you to Helsinki?
Well, I'm in Helsinki actually recording my new full-length solo album. So I've been here since begin May. We've actually started working on the album before, but this spring month we are making final recordings in studio. So that means all the lead vocals are done. Musicians are added to the album to record on special instruments. And of course, I'm also recording my own instrumentation here. And I work here together with producer Jaani Peuhu, who is actually a Finnish composer and musician. And because he is based in Helsinki and our contact was good through working together before on another project named E&I, I've decided to do this album with him as my producer for this record. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here actually. I haven't been to Finland before, but it's still for me part of the Nordic region. I feel very comfortable here between studio sessions, roaming the woods, getting inspired, recharging my battery in nature. So it all fits, and yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Can you tell a little bit about new record?
Of course, yeah. So this record actually has been in the making for a long time. I've been writing songs years prior to the moment of actually doing this album in full. I had previously started with just releasing singles independently and going track by track, while also gathering the research, lyrical work and inspiration to write the rest of the album. And because the themes are both personal and rooted in Nordic mythology, I've really taken my time, you could say, to dive deep into what I wanted to say through use of the sagas, knowledge of the past, but also bringing in my own reflections towards those sometimes historical events, sometimes more mythological stories in the past, and intertwining it with my personal experiences in life. So the album is actually, for me, a blend of my personal interest in history, in mythology, even what people call fairy tales, deep myth and mythical messages, but also my own poetry and personal words about my life, my reflections towards it, and how I sort of take the past and these mythologies as a guideline to connect it with personal experiences, therefore sort of creating my own mythological story. So I think that is what this album in the core is about, is to sort of mythologize your own life and reflections and poetry by intertwining it with these old sagas and myths and, well, also to a certain extent teachings that are still in the past. So, and of course, it is a Nordic folk album. So musically, I'm continuing the work as I have previously made releases in that same genre. And for this one, I'm also stepping one step forward in the journey of music. And that also ties into that personal journey that I'm taking throughout this album. So we are seeing very traditional folkloric songs, but I'm also stepping into the future and expanding elements from other genres into this record, which I think is super exciting to do. And it's something that I have felt always a hunger for, to sort of not repeat yourself, but keep trying to bring in new challenges and new elements towards your own music and art. Of course, my instrumentation is the same as I've always used with regards to the historic elements. I have the moraharpas present, the nyckelharpa, kraviklira, lots of percussive elements, flutes, bone flutes, bells, even some objects one maybe wouldn't consider to make sounds out of, natural sounds from nature as well. And yeah, I also bring in some new elements, as I said before. So this album, for example, also explores synth modulation, manual modulation of electronic sounds. I really think that can still be blended very well with organic and natural and historic sounds, but provides another element and sort of pulse to the beat and to the skin drums that we of course also use in the Nordic folk music genre. Yeah.
And who are you recording this album together with?
I told you my producer is Jaani Peuhu. We do a lot of recordings on this album together. Mainly the lead vocals are, like all lead vocals, are done by myself, but also most of the harmonizations, which means we're doing some choir building actually from harmonic layers that I'm singing myself. In that sense, this album also presents a broader vocal range than listeners have heard of me before. But I also have guest artists on the album. I can reveal, for example, that one of my returning guests is Gal, or best known as Gal or Christian Espedal from Norway. We have worked together before, and it feels very natural to work together with him. I personally believe our voices blend very nicely because he has this deep baritone metal voice, and at the same time can sing with a lot of emotion and fragility. And yeah, I really enjoy continuing working together with him. I also have some other guests present from the Nordic folk genre, one of which I can also share is Dutch man, Dutch vocalist, I should say, but also multi-instrumentalist named Jonathan Barensma, or better known as the musician Geldir. He has been making quite a rise in Nordic folk, and during the COVID years, we actually decided to do some work together. And one of the elements that we started working on in that period was taken into this album and expanded upon. So I asked him just quite recently to do a little bit more vocal work for that, so that we could actually make it into a beautiful song, because it just fitted. And sometimes that is also the fun of making all these new songs, is that something you didn't expect to end up on your album suddenly can be this moment where you feel this is exactly what this song needs. Let's incorporate it in. And in that sense, it also has been very intuitive in developing these kind of collaborations. Yeah, I follow the heart in that sense. When it feels good, I will ask or approach a person, or they have contacted me before. There are more guests on the album, but I'll leave a little bit of teaser for the future with regards to sharing all of that.
Right,
Yeah.
and when the album is planned to come out?
It will come out in 24. I cannot tell you yet the exact release date, because my album very much would like to announce that themselves, or like my label would like to announce that themselves. But it will come relatively soon in 24.
So any other projects you are working on now?
Yes, I also work for the television and film industry and video game industry, sometimes as a hired musician to bring certain historic elements in sound towards film scores, TV scores, like we've done previously for Vikings Valhalla, or in general working with composer Trevor Morris together in mostly Viking films, of course, Viking themed films. At the moment I'm doing a score with another composer for another movie which I cannot tell the name of yet. All these things are announced later, but what I can share is that it's really a pleasure, because this score in particular brings the historic Nordic folk instruments into a modern setting. So this has been super nice to work on top on. And we just also finished up a video game production that also really desire to have those ethnic, medieval and Nordic instrumentations. Here I could actually use a little bit more music and instruments beyond that typical Viking and Nordic sound, because I actually have at home a little bit more ethnical instrumentations from different regions, you can say, in the world, from other cultures. And this video game uses different worlds within the game. It will be announced. I can reveal that I worked for the lead composer Chris Valesco, also an LA-based composer, and yeah, it's been also a pleasure to work with this person. So yeah, expanding into that field of working with other composers, whether it's for a video game or a TV show or a film, has been super nice and really unexpected. Especially if I look back at where we were 10, 15 years ago, I don't think anyone who is working in the Nordic folk genre and in that realm of sound would have expected such a surge of demand towards this kind of sounds for a mainstream audience. And a lot of my friends and colleagues have actually had really wonderful opportunities as well, whether it's for a film, video game, or even musicals. So yeah, we are in very interesting and lucky times when it comes to making music with these old, beautiful instruments for, yeah, composers from all over the world, actually. It's exciting. And I really hope all these productions come out. I know they're coming out, but soon, because then I can finally, say for which movie exactly or for which game. But what I've also learned as a musician is that is something totally new. You have to wait a little with your excitement in sharing, because there's a lot of contracts involved, NDAs, all really new and exciting things to have to deal with and bite your tongue for until that moment is there. And then, yeah, I know for myself and also for my colleagues, it's such a proud moment to be able to share it.
Okay, and you mentioned Viking Valhalla. Of course, it's very interesting to know how you had that opportunity to work with Trevor Morris.
Well, I worked with Trevor Morris before Vikings Valhalla, actually on a Dutch production, Dutch film production by director Roel Reine. And he did the movie Redbad, which was based on a Frisian period with a Viking figurehead there. And Trevor Morris had actually visited set also in the Netherlands and reached out to me because, well, we had been a little bit in contact before during the main Vikings TV show. And there he saw the opportunity, this is a Dutch film about Vikings. This is our moment to introduce you to my scoring work, and let's give this a go. And that worked out seamlessly. And then when Vikings got a spin-off series, Vikings Valhalla, this is also the moment where they switched the main director. But at the same time, they wanted to have the core audience of the first series still have some sort of recognition points in instrumentation for that new score for Vikings Valhalla. And so with the switch of lead composer, or not lead composer Trevor Morris, but director, it was the opportunity as well to put in new musicians. And so, yeah, Trevor wrote me again and asked me if I would like to have a online meeting to demonstrate more instruments that I had at home. And this was really the funniest moment for me, because I really look up to his composing work, not only for the Vikings series, but in general. He has a beautiful way to do emotional storytelling through music. And so there I was, showing all the instruments I have on my wall and on my desk. Well, I have this flute, that flute. And he really asked me, like, I want to hear everything you have so that I can think about it. What can we use for Vikings Valhalla? And so we did. And we made about an hour of music as a demo for the director of the show. This was approved. And then I got the second call with the whole official welcome aboard the team for music direction. That was really fun. And I've also brought him in contact with a few of my colleagues for specific historic instruments, because they don't come around too often. So it was nice to connect some contexts and sort of weave the web for Vikings Valhalla to make sure it had a lot of historical instruments present. I think it was a beautiful way to keep working together. And it's still a beautiful show. It reaches a large audience, even though it's entertainment. There, you can go back and forth a lot, about what was exactly historical correct or not. I think it's a beautiful TV series and a really nice introduction to the subject of the period, and taking elements like trade and travel and exploration of new continents in. So yeah, it's been good collaboration.
How did you even end up in Nordic folk?
Oh, well, then we have to travel back in time 20 years ago. I ended up in Nordic folk by getting to know mainly Celtic folk originally at first. I got to know the band members of a Dutch Celtic pagan folk band named Omnia through a festival that I attended, doing some acting there with another thing I've done. And I got to know these people, and I was captivated by the use of old Celtic instruments that they had, a big harp, skin drums, and a man playing flute, double flute. And it was so beautiful that I had to talk to these people and get to know them, and we did. And from there, quite naturally, I started to help them out when they went to concerts. I sort of helped as a merchandise girl. Meanwhile, we hung out a little bit, and I got to learn from their band leader named Steve Sick Evans more about these ancient instruments, which he had learned from working in museums, actually historical museums, giving demonstrations to people in audience. So that was my first acquaintance with a large variety of folk instrumentation that was not necessarily modern made, but actually replica from historical findings. And through that, we got to meet also fellow colleagues and musicians from the group Faun in Germany. And they had kind of a similar repertoire, both working with mythology and working with historical instruments. And we had some tours together. I was still selling CDs, but everything around me just buzzed with instruments, with musicians. And I was very eager to try them all out and keep my ears open and look at everything that was going on. And year by year, I started to pick up more the desire of wanting to do something with music. I felt that pull in myself. But coming from a non-musical background, I didn't know where to start. How does one even begin to make music if you haven't had lessons as a child? I didn't have the piano lessons or the choir history. I was just hungry to get to learn how to do this. And it started out with a partner at the time giving me my first drum. And I remember having that drum and not really knowing how to beat it. Should I beat it on the sound of the songs that I like a lot? There was so much to learn. But being around these musicians, being on tour with them, I did learn and I got lessons. And then came the jump to the nyckelharpa instruments. I joined Oliver Zatur from the group Faun to a nyckelharpa course in Germany. We spent a weekend there. There was also a room where absolute beginners could get to know this instrument, and I fell in love with the sound there. And I left that weekend with my very own nyckelharpa that I could take over from a priest who was there and actually didn't have need of it anymore. And the offer was good. I decided to take the risk, even though I didn't have that deep musical background, because I felt it. This is what I need to do. And so then started my nyckelharpa lessons, trying to work my way through learning tonality, tuning, you name it. And what I like about this story is like, how did it start? Well, it started with just the need for wanting to do something with sound, wanting to tell my stories, because I'd been in that environment of musicians performing these amazing shows and making that deep connection with the audience. And I felt, I think I have something to say. I think I have something that I want to share. My inner world, the things I like in books, in fairy tales, in mythology. And so started my very first band, Leaf, which was then rooted in Scandinavian folklore. And that led me to visit Viking markets in Scandinavia and Norway. And there turned out to be a small but very closely knit and befriended group of people who were deep into Viking reenactments, and especially that time period, and who were as well making music. And a lot of the musicians we see today that are playing large stages were already present in those earliest of days, spending time around the campfire, playing tagelharpa or a bone flute, or telling a story while, climbing a tree or beating on a drum. And what I see today with the Nordic folk genre is that I see people who I've known who really went for the love of mythology and Viking sagas, you could say history, for the love of these historical meetings in reenactment and having those shared moments of music and storytelling, to become now storytellers and sort of carriers of these mythological stories and sagas to a large audience through different presentations like Wardruna, Heilung, Folk Norte Vorporvin. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Benny and Gustav. I always forget how to say your band name. But all these groups, Hjälbraten, they were their very first days in Scandinavia. Chris and Maria were, growing up as children on the Viking markets. Kai UFOs was tattooing there at first, and now, me having that interest originally into Scandinavian folklore in particular, and traveling there to the north and meeting these wonderful people, friends of mine I can call them after so many years, has really opened that door for me. And so naturally we started collaborating. I did some guest performances with Wardruna, for example. That was very fun period. I got invited to see one of Einar's shows in Roodburn in the Netherlands. We met again, for a Viking market. They played also in Gudvangen. And very naturally, because we were a small group that played these ancient instruments, and it wasn't such a big thing as we see today, it came to be that, hey, why don't we share a moment of song and maybe on stage? So that was beautiful to do. That was also where I, of course, got to know Gal, Christian Espedal, and who I'm now, recording my album, also with him as a singer. With the band Heilung, I've helped as a manager for the debut shows of Liva in Castlefest and Midgersblot in 2017. What I can say about it, I've done a lot, but it went all very naturally because we meet up on the road, we meet up on the Viking markets or the festivals. And having had such a long history with each other already, it's kind of natural that at one point or the other in your career, you end up doing something with each other, whether that's in music, whether that's management, whether that's, introducing a friend of mine, Merkur, to historic folk instruments. She was also very interested to learn more about that. So I visited her in Denmark in 2016, 17, somewhere there, bringing all my stuff and showing her how they are played and how they sound. It's just, became very natural to do that, to share it with each other, to share the knowledge of these instruments. And I think that is the most prevalent aspects of this, is that we like to share our instruments, our music, our stories, and do so in a creative way. And that brings me to now, with my solo album that I'm recording now here in Finland, is that it feels very good on a personal level, but also on a sort of musical level, to now present my work, like what I've gathered from these stories, from collaborations, from collecting my own songs, my own thoughts, writing my own poetry, working with linguists together from Bergen University, for example, and blending all that experience and passion for these old stories, and that personal journey through the landscape of the Nordic folk music genre into one album. And that's a pretty heavy job, pretty nice. And my previous release, Lus, was already the harbinger of that. It was recorded also with Christopher Yule in Denmark. But here I really present really like songs that are not traditional, for example, existing songs that have been sung for centuries, but they are now my own work. That's the short, long answer, or the long, short answer.
Your stage name is Kati Rán, so why Rán? Who is Rán?
Well, Rán, or Raun, if we say it in Icelandic, is actually a mythological figure from the sagas, personification of the sea, the female personification of the sea. And it's sort of a name that fell to me because I just started to get to know the Nordic mythology and the old gods and Jotnar when I didn't know that much about it. But from my mother's side, I actually have a great-great-great-grandmother, and her last name was Rán. And so I thought, back in 2013-ish, 12, 13, this is a cool name, I'll take it. And then I dove in deep, who is actually Rán in mythology. But I felt a connection to my own family. And I thought, well, what are the odds? There is a Nordic name in our family history. And that became my artist name. And it was falling together with a time where I was looking for an artist name, because I didn't want to work under the band name anymore of Leaf. I felt, let's take a step now. I'm doing the album as a solo artist. I'm releasing it by myself. So I put it on my name, which became Kati Rán. Yeah.
How do you usually approach writing a song? Because I know you have this very long compositions, very unconventional. I read your interviews. You tell that you prefer something alternative to conventional song structure. So how it's getting born?
Yeah, I think the unconventionality to song structure is also stemming from my love for deep lyrical work or poetry. Whether I look at the old texts in sagas or mainly when I incorporate these pieces into self-written lyrics, my starting point is actually the story, the lyrical work. And there I don't actually write the lyrics in an easy rhyme where I think, okay, this will make an easy song lyric. I write them how I feel them. And that can be, if I look at the lyrics on the upcoming new album, that can actually cause already disruptions in typical song structure. But to the delight of my producer, Jaani Peuhu, we will make room to put it all in. And this creates very interesting bridges. So I think sometimes, you know, the melody is already in the words of the lyrical work I do. Sometimes the melody comes later, that I try to sort of find it towards the words. But in any case, with my song work, I will put that story first. And I will sort of force and push myself to find solutions if that asks of me to make another musical bridge or to switch mood during song, which I'm doing on the new album. Some songs start very differently than where they end up, just because the words have taken me there and they demanded a different melody or even a different way of performing them, ranging from very soft, intimate, almost like whispering in your ears, to loud and screaming. So that range is so broad.
You have that philosophy about music. I'd like to hear a little bit more about it, like why you're creating.
Why? I cannot not do it, I have to say. That is my first answer. So for me, it is a spiritual practice, and it is, one could say, almost a mission to sort of look through this mythology lens and write out your thoughts, share your emotions, and don't make it always pretty, but try to be as natural and raw as possible. Leave the filter and let it come through, or let it come out. And that is something I dabble with when writing music, or when I'm doing other art. Actually, I try to do the same when I'm drawing or doing other creative work. That's something I find to be very beneficial, and I need that element in my life, so that on the other moments I can just be Kati, you know, enjoying hanging out with friends, going shopping, whatever, just like anyone else. But I need those moments where I feel, okay, I'm doing something spiritual, creative, intuitive, and free of any rules. So that's also with when we look at song structure, you know, bringing out an ambient single of 16 minutes with an irregular song structure down tempo is something, well, it's not a commercial move, but for me it's a spiritual way of performance. It's where words, you know, come through and the sound supports that, and the natural environment and the sort of mythological world that I shape these songs in as well supports that way of messaging words and lyrics and feeling. So I think, yeah, that is the most sane way I can describe it, to let the madness in a little so that you can create art with it.
And what is a spirituality to you? Are you like pagan, or it's more broad?
Yeah. So now we see a lot of these names like, oh, I'm pagan, or I'm a spiritualist, or I'm a witch, you know. And I'm all of that and none of that, because I don't like to play by the rules, and I don't like to give it a name, because sometimes that exactly is the way we lose the essence of it. For me, spirituality is a way of being in relating to each other, relating to nature. A word that in the best way probably describes the way I see things is animism. That is a form of where we feel life force in everything around us.
Maybe we just close down with some message to
Yeah.
whoever watches this interview.
Dear watcher, I hope you enjoyed hearing my answers to these questions, and I hope you will enjoy the new album I'm bringing out next year. And good journeys. I hope we meet on the crossroads.